This video is all about how to do a subdivision. I'm Anton Stetner. I've been doing land development projects here in the Seattle Metro for over the last 20 years, and I want to share with you guys the knowledge in this video that we've learned to help you make less mistakes and make more money. I'm going to walk you through a checklist that may work perfectly for your area and it may not. You're going to have to check with your local city or your local county for their exact process. But we want to outline the process that can make you millions and millions of dollars through land development and subdivision. The problem is most people think land development is easy. It's not a simple process. This is not for the faint of heart. This is why there's so much upside that's created. So I'm going to walk you through the pitfalls, what you should be paying attention to in this checklist. Generally speaking, most municipalities have a pre-application meeting that you could do before you submit for the whole process. If that's the case in your area, I would recommend you do that first. Step one, go get a copy of the application and the application checklist. This is going to be your roadmap to push through your subdivision. Two, you're going to have to complete a project narrative. A project narrative explains the zoning, where the property is, the tax ID, the amount of units that would be possible, the amount of units that you're asking for. This is your opportunity to paint a really good picture and to tell a good story to help the city or the county's engineer understand what you're doing. Spend extra time on the project narrative to make sure that it's clear and concise. If the engineer prepares this for you, make sure to review it and as an outside person go, does this make sense? Is this an easy story to follow? Bonus tip, when you look at the checklist, you're going to see things on there like landscape design, road design, EDS deviation, preliminary plat map, etc. Please understand, if the project narrative or one of these items is missing, generally speaking, they're just going to reject your application. So when you put the package together, this is a double check, triple check, quadruple check type like thing to make sure that you have everything in there, because every rejection will cost you days, if not weeks. And in this situation, when you're doing land development, you've essentially put money right in the middle of the table, lit the cash on fire. So time is money and of the essence. Part of a subdivision is generally what's called an ERDS, a URDS, the Urban Residential Design Standards. And this includes everything from building placement and orientation. It includes possible architectural plans or renderings, parking, access, where pedestrians going, things of that nature. ERDS also starts to dictate design standards. In other words, if you have 7 units as example, if you did a 6-unit subdivision, you may not have certain design standards that then happen at the 7th unit. So always pay attention to the code for each level of design standard. There are times where you will run into doing a subdivision project where you decide not to max out the property because of the additional design standards, and it's just going to increase costs and timelines, but it may not increase your return. Item number 4 is your preliminary subdivision map. The preliminary map is basically you're looking down from above, from the sky, the 30,000-foot view, and it shows flat in 2D where the roads are located, where the house sites are located, stormwater detention, things like that. It doesn't explain how things are going to be built. That's done further on in the process. Item number 5 is your landscaping plan. You have to show them where you're putting the trees, where you're putting the shrubs, how you're complying with the design standards, where the park benches are going, where the bike rack is going. And a lot of landscaping plans also include lighting plans. They want to know that pedestrians are safe and where the lights are going to be placed, and then how the lights are spreading over that particular area. Item number 6 is a preliminary land disturbing activities, or what we call the LDA, which used to be called a grading permit. They want to know in general how much earth you're going to be moving in order to complete this subdivision. You don't have to have the full LDA and the full design standards line out, but you have to be able to describe how much earth is going to be moved, what the topography is going to look like, and what you're going to do with it. This next one we call the SWIP, aka the Storm Water Pollution Prevention Plan, or a drainage plan. I live in Washington State. I live here in the Seattle Metro. We are the evergreen state. We get a lot of water. So how water runs off the buildings, runs off the sidewalks, where it's collected, when it hits a catch basin, what's the flow rate, and then where it's going to be discharged or evaporated massively determines how our land development projects work here in Washington State. You're also going to need a title report or a plat certificate. We use Chicago Title Company most of the time because they're the ones that control about 80 to 90% of the new construction in our area. I'd recommend you go with a title company who's extremely versed in land development because there's a massive difference between those who understand this process and those who don't. When you're blessed to find one who does, they can help and guide you along the way. They can push you towards other consultants. They can help you with the pitfalls and the mistakes that you would be making. Item number 10 is the public notice. In our area, you have to pay for the city or the county to notice everyone around them what you're doing in your project. This opens it up for comments and for complaints. Don't worry about the complaints part. As long as you are complying with the code and in line with the code, they can't stop your subdivision. The only thing they can do is delay it. So make sure you're working with a reputable engineer who understands the municipality you're working with and their specific quirks and requirements and their timelines so that this process right here doesn't cause you massive pain. These next ones are called additional documents, but I'm going to tell you they're not just additional documents. These are ones that are almost always necessary, but a lot of municipalities, they say, oh, this may be due. You might as well start up front, especially if you live in a consumer protection liberal state like we do here in Washington. This stuff is always required. So number 11 is the traffic documentation. Generally speaking, you're going to have to go get a traffic study. And inside that traffic study, they're going to decide on the number of trips that you are creating, which is additional traffic on the roadways, which are fees that you have to pay for. If you are creating too many trips or above a threshold, or you believe you are creating less trips than what their manual dictates, then you're going to have to offer a mitigation offer in order to combat additional fees or ask for fees off. 12, your critical areas report, aka the wetland report. You get the wetland biologist to come out, draw out where the wetlands are located, figure out the plants, animals that are inside of that wetland, and then the buffer off of that wetland, which dictates your total buildable area. These critical areas are generally recorded as what's called a CASP, a critical area site plan, which is locked from future development. At the edge of the buffer, we generally have to put in some type of fencing and then signage that says NGPA or Native Growth Protection Area. The next item on the list is number 13, which is your habitat management plan. If inside of that wetlands, you are getting into a fish habitat, a bird habitat, something of that nature, you may have to do some type of a habitat management plan. And you also may have to do some type of buffer restoration. Don't let them tell you that the property is completely unusable or inaccessible just because of wetlands and habitat. There's always ways to mitigate this. Item number 14 is the geotechnical report. The geotech comes out. What they do is they drill holes down into the ground to figure out the type of soil you have, where the bearing soil is, how quickly the water drains through the soil. Ever since Washington had some of the landslides, like the Oso landslide, this has become a bigger and bigger issue in our area. That's why this is under the additional that might be required, but most of the time it's strictly required. Item number 15, the hydrogeological report, aka what's really happening with the water, or where's the water table and how is it being affected by everything around it. This one actually is a maybe. This only happens when you've got high water tables or you're impacting something or it's a really big subdivision that's crossing a certain threshold. Item 16, the EDS deviation. ED stands for Engineering, Design, and Development Standards. You may have a deviation where the property that you're asking for is on the corner, and you're asking for the side yard setback to be 10 feet instead of 15. That would be an EDS deviation. Most subdivisions that we do have some type of an EDS deviation inside of them. Each one of these is its own special negotiation. Be prepared to articulate your point of view, explain why it's beneficial and in the public interest, and clearly demonstrate that. If you can do that, quite often these are granted. You have to get on their good side and be their friend and ask good questions in order to get these things. I will tell you, EDS deviations are completely subjective, so they can literally just tell you no. So come prepared and come ready to negotiate every time you ask for one. Item 17. At times there are modifications that you're going to want to do to the landscaping requirements, in which case you're going to need a landscape modification letter. A letter letter from the landscape architect demonstrating how you can't comply with current standard or you don't want to, the code referencing, and then your plan to address it. Once again, with each one of these, a good land developer tells a good story. They walk the people through the process. You spoon feed them the answers and the how-to and the why. Item number 18 is building elevations. So you may not have a full building design, but you should have footprints. And a lot of times you can get a masking or a front elevation. This helps you to tell the story. So quite often we always have this included, especially if it's a bigger project. Item 19, your SEPA environmental checklist. The SEPA is the State Environmental Protection Agency. I will tell you, you want to try to do everything humanly possible to avoid the threshold that kicks a SEPA into existence. This will be just a gigantic pain. It'll take a lot more time and a lot more money. And so this is another example of you would do the subdivision with less units if it avoided triggering the SEPA. Number 20, you want to demonstrate that you have the authority to sign on behalf of the entity that's purchasing it. Towards the end of this video, I'm going to include 2 bonus tips that municipalities quite often lie to you and they say they are optional, but I'm going to tell you, if you don't figure these out first, this will be $100,000, if not a multiple $1,000,000 mistake that you make. And number 20, you need to go reserve the actual plat name. They want to make sure that they don't have the exact same subdivision name everywhere. So you go make a reservation as you're putting in your plat application. Items 22 and 23. These are called optional by a lot of jurisdictions. I will tell you they are not optional. I will tell you that before you start your process, you must go take care of items 22 and 23, because if you don't, this will screw up your whole project. And that is, have you spoken with the school district and received their comments? And have you talked with the local utility districts and got an availability letter for both water and sewer? If you are unable to obtain an availability letter because maybe the water is at capacity or the sewer is at capacity, your project's dead. It's now economically unfeasible. So get this done first. Don't wait for last, even though this is at the end of the checklist. And the school district can greatly impact how your project is put together. I put a trail through one of our projects to access a middle school. Because the school district allowed that, I got a density credit and I was able to get almost 2 more units. It was a 1.75. From another incentive, I was able to get another credit. So that got us 2 extra units on a townhome project we did. The school is very important. Chat with them too. So if you want to fast track your approvals, 1, optional or additional documentation is not really optional. 2, I want you to build an amazing project narrative. 3, I want you to triple check, quadruple check everything. I want you to have the engineer explain it to you, sell you on the process. I want you to put together your own narrative, the objections, and the 3 ways to overcome each objection. Then I want you to give it to a neutral third party who knows nothing about what you're doing. Have them review it. And if they have a basic understanding of what you're trying to do, you just built the most amazing subdivision application ever. My name's Anton Stettner. We work here in the Seattle Metro. We do these projects. We buy them for our investors. We have outside investors that also do this stuff with us. If you're interested in real estate, land development, and doing subdivisions, hit that magic subscribe button. We went through a lot in this video, and this is just scratching the surface. If you have questions, drop them below. If we missed something or it's different in your municipality, let us know. We're happy to add them to future videos.